Hey you guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If it's your first time here, welcome. I'm Allie Wilkins. I'm a priestess and I teach about the ancient feminine, and I work with our soul blueprint individually with people to support their expansion and their ability to really step into their destiny. So today I'm coming from Charleston, South Carolina, in front of this beautiful tree which has so much energy, and thought it was perfect to talk about sovereignty in front of this tree with its energy. So while you're watching this, know that the tree itself is also sharing energy that you can tune into. It's not just me here today. So today, let's talk about sovereignty in the midst of chaos. And I think sovereignty is something that we're all being asked to step in a deeper way. And to me, sovereignty really means self-leadership. It means having the integrity and the impeccability to be standing on your own 2 feet, grounded, rooted on the earth, living according to your own blueprint, to your own design with integrity. And I think that the really important thing for us to be stepping into, as there's like a growing whirlwind of fear and scarcity and induced panic, it's extremely important that we take responsibility for our own inner experience and for cultivating a sense of groundedness and peace within. I'm not talking about bypassing, because a lot of times this is the same type of conversation that people will have when they're saying like, oh, well, you just, you have to fill your own cup first before you can help others. That's actually an extremely individualistic perspective that all of us have been taught from a patriarchal society, right? But actually, if we have something in our cup, why would we not share it with others? Doesn't mean that you give every single thing that you have to every single other person outside yourself, but we don't have to have a completely full cup in order to give to someone else, right? So I wanted to just bring that phrasing in because I heard that someone posted it the other day and I was like, yeah, that's actually very true, because a lot of the conversations that people have around sovereignty and the global experience, or sovereignty in relation to collective liberation, or in relation to, polycrisis and femicide and all these things that are real, that are being experienced on Earth today, it comes with a conversation of bypassing of, well, self-care, you have to make sure you're good. The thing is that that's actually true. It's just we're wanting to come into a center point. So I'm gonna, if you're looking at the screen here, I'm using a range, okay? On the left side, we have like activism and involvement in a way that depletes you, in a way that isn't, that you're not being nourished, in a way that is caring so much, but usually ending up being very scattered and depleted. So you're not able to actually function at your highest, even if you know what to do, even if you have something specific that you can do. On the other end of that is complete bypassing. It's taking care of yourself as an individual, or maybe your own individual family, and ignoring everything else, or saying, oh, this is just a part of the, probably like 2/3 in, it's like, this is a part of the divine plan, which is true. And as a human being that has empathy and that cares and that um, understands the law of karma and all of those different things, we also remember that we are not just leaders, and that we are also participating in all of this, and that we have a choice and a responsibility to shift and change what it is that we can. But I'm noticing myself, and I've had a lot of people message me and ask questions like, how are you coping? How are you keeping your peace during all of this? Because um, right now, in the last month, I'm recording this February 27th, 2025, but it's probably, this message is going to be usable forever. It's going to be usable, especially over the next several years, as um, we see the patriarchy start to fall in a real way. We see the system start to crumble as the new one is being built. So uh, I've been seeing so many people get really in all of the basically narcissistic drama and attention-seeking patterning that the new administration is doing with things like, the ASMR video that they put out of ICE, like putting out the like shackles and making an ASMR thing about that, like repulsive and disgusting. Um, or the new Gaza video that Trump has put out. These things are classic narcissistic behaviors, and the patriarchal system in general is narcissistic. Um, it is feeding off of our emotional response and our emotional state. So when we see stuff like this, and you're seeing also real things that are being thrown in, new laws that are being created, or some person who's has far more control than I think he actually should, creating laws and creating new shifts and changes that actually impact so many people. There are also real things that are happening among this, but what we want to look at is the amount of like attention seeking behaviors. It's like, look at this, be scared, look at this, be scared, look at this, be scared, look at this, be scared. And if there's all these things being thrown out at us, half of them being true, half of them being false, we have to develop an incredible responsibility and level of discernment to understand how to cultivate our own centeredness. This is like the keystone to sovereignty. So when I talk about sovereignty, it's meant something different to me over the years, especially as I've taught sovereignty for several years now, from the understanding of what it is to be a priestess to the understanding of how to cultivate an energetic channel and tap into your mediumship gifts or to tap into your intuitive gifts in a much deeper way. Sovereignty can mean a lot of things, but ultimately it means that your channel is sovereign and clear and free of anything else. It's not attached to other entities. It's not attached to other things. It's not, um, and also these other things don't have power over you. That is far easier said than done, right? But understanding like what is it that actually has the ability to affect you and your emotions? Who do you choose to give that power to? Because we always have a choice, and this is something that is cultivated over time. It's a tool, it's a like mental fortitude that we have to create and practice. And you can easily see this in dating, or especially if you're dating someone who's or married to someone, or in relationship in any way with someone who is actually narcissistic. Those types of relationships will really show you how other people can feed off of your energy. If you think about when you're in your most powerful state, how does that feel? Like, even just in your body now as you're watching this, take on your most powerful state. Like, immediately, I have both my feet on the ground, rooted down, like toes up, spreading your toes out all the way on the ground, yoga style, spine straight, crown up towards the sky, shoulders back, posture straight up so that you're sturdy and rooted, and it would be harder for someone to like push you over, for example. So in this state of when you're in a sovereign, stronger state, it's harder for people to push you around because you're solid in yourself. And when we're talking about sovereignty, that solidity, so often we have to cultivate it from an emotional standpoint and from an energetic standpoint. And being an Akashic Records reader, if this is your first time ever seeing me, I work in the records. And if you don't know what that is, ultimately it means that I'm just incredibly perceptive when it comes to energy. So it's very easy for me to tangibly see for myself and also for other people that I might be working with. What are the attachments that are hooked into me that are sucking my power field, that are sucking power from me, that are siphoning it from me? And this might even be like you get in a fight with a friend or something, and that's leaking energy out. And so much of the work that I do around the energetics of sovereignty is about cultivating your field so that you aren't leaking energy, so that you have a strong barrier, not walls, not a 20-foot gate, but you have barriers that protect you, that keep your auric field separate from all these other things. Because so many people I've been seeing are um and I'm talking about this because this has absolutely affected me in so many different times, and it just feels like right now I'm pretty sturdy in relation to how this is showing up within politics and with Trump. A lot of this I learned from being in a really narcissistic, dangerous relationship, and also from being very, very, very pulled in and affected by the genocide that is happening and that just happened over the last year and a half in Gaza, and seeing how that affected me and how it affected my power, and how much it made me my allowance of like letting myself be so deeply affected, which some of that is just emotional. Like, if you see images of the types of things that were coming through in Gaza, like, of course you're going to have a response unless you're just like inhuman. But also my willingness to watch that sort of content, my willingness to participate and to get myself emotionally riled up and to sit there and talk about it and and so this range that I brought in the beginning is looking at what is the center point of that, because the answer is not bypassing and going into light and love and just like, I'm just going to stay in my own thing and I'm not going to pay attention to anything else going on in the world, because then you might be good. However, you're actually not in a state of oneness because you're separating yourself from everything else in the natural world, from other humans who you are innately connected to, and what's happening to them could happen to you in 1 second. And so then later, if it does happen to you and it's like, well, you didn't care when it was happening to other people, and so there's this line over here that's spiritual bypassing. And then, like I said, on the other end, it's like relentlessly devoted activism that sacrifices yourself and your power. So you're not really that powerful to actually be able to do anything, because you're at the mercy of whatever information is coming in. You're at the mercy of narcissistic, like psychotic behavioral tactics that they're doing to try to get you to be upset. Because if you're upset, if you think about it in like a relationship, if you're upset, it's much more likely that you're not going to be coming from your most powerful state, because you're in a reactive space. When you wait a minute and you get calm and you're like, you can actually see things from a clear state of mind, that's when you're able to do something powerful, create impactful change from that position that doesn't create harm. So what we're doing right now energetically is learning how to come into that center point where our responsibility as new earth leaders, as change makers, as visionaries, as people who are stewarding the new way, in whatever way that looks like for you, our responsibility is to be incredibly rooted, grounded, strong, prioritizing our own sovereign experience so that we can create the change that's necessary and have the strength and the focus and the centeredness and the concentration to not be distracted by every little thing, like, the current leadership saying this and saying that and saying this and saying that, and that takes you off of your focus. So you're not actually doing anything. I'm saying this from my own experience. I'm not thinking about anybody or that. It's from my own experience, just seeing how it affected me and my ability to actually create change. So coming into that center point, but then also still being able to look at what's going on. You don't have blinders on. It's not like, oh, I'm just in my own focus and I'm only focused on my goal and what I'm doing, what I'm creating, because we don't want to be staying in this individualistic energy. We also don't want to be in a completely collective energy either, because then it's like there also needs to be a balance between the individual aspects and the collective aspects, like group consciousness, which is more in the East, and then in the West, it's more individual. How do we come into the center point where we're prioritizing our own centeredness and peace and focus so that we can contribute to what's happening on a larger global scale? So the thing that I'm thinking about that maybe you could think about as well, and you can add anything in the comments that you want to add to this conversation, and maybe tune into the tree, because I feel like the tree might have some energy as well. I'm just going to take a big deep breath in. What we can think about is, what are you actually able to change? What is it that your skill set, what is it that your interests and your energy and what you're naturally really good at, how can you contribute to change? I just saw one of my old teachers, Sydney Campos, and she made a post, and she used to do like Akashic Record readings, and she used to do mentorship and that sort of thing, and energy healings. And she made a post about how her mission is now moving more into actually creating the sovereign systems within corporations, that's implanting a new way of operating for corporations in relation to some particular financial things. But like, when you look at that, it's like right now we're at a time period where we're about to go into eclipse season. So if you're watching this later, this part might not apply, but everything else will. We're going into a positioning where we're being guided into it's going to be a more narrow lane of what you're really here to do. And this, by the way, this just continues to get deeper and deeper and more specific throughout your life. But right now, there's a collective energy around this as we're going into eclipse season. This particular one, not every eclipse season, but this particular one, how I see it from the Akashic perspective, is that our soul blueprints, we are being shifted and moved into the areas that we can really actually create change. And you don't have to know that right this second, but it's probably like eclipse energy is pretty faded and pretty like sharp shifts and changes, you know? So, um, in relation to this conversation, sovereignty amidst political chaos and chaos of any sort, what is your role in that? How can you actually create a shift or change? Um, what are your skill sets? Like I was saying, what are your interests? How does your experience potentially contribute to something? So it's like for me, for example, I don't really know how to do much in the political sphere. I'm not really interested in going to protests. I'm not really interested in a lot of things that are in relation to politics. However, I know people who have political science degrees who really understand the nitty-gritty of how politics work, or who understand how things move around in DC, or people who understand like the engineering around certain things and certain aspects of technologies or of AI. Or so there's a million different areas that we can be focusing on. Where do we want to actually be creating change? So for me, for example, just as I was talking about, my role is supporting other visionaries and other leaders and old souls who are like, I actually came here for a mission. I'm not here to be like doing this fucking matrix bullshit. I'm actually here to steward the way, the bridge into this new earth system. And my job is to help those people understand their blueprint and understand the trenches and the mountains and the lakes and the difficulties and the challenges and the all the nitty-gritty pieces that are upon their path, to help them with completing their soul mission, which is like an extra set of eyes where they can't see. So if my attention and my energy is spent trying to work in areas that I really, if I'm just being honest, my skill set doesn't lend to that. Doesn't mean that I can't pay attention or that I can't ever talk about it. Not at all. It just means that I'm not directing most of my energy there. And this is where it starts to turn into a conversation about our responsibility. How am I stewarding my vessel? How am I stewarding what I'm consuming, what I'm exposing myself to, where I'm letting myself get emotionally riled up? If you're like me, a very, very, very feminine person, I can go deep into my emotional system. And if I go deep into my emotions, I could be like, I'm a projector, I'm so sensitive to energy, I can be out for a whole week if I just get myself thinking about one thing and just like go on it, you know? And we have to have this, I always talk about like this energy of pristine beingness, stewarding a pristine channel. As an intuitive, as a seer, as an oracle, as a medium, as anyone with those sorts of gifts, that is vital for you. But it's vital for everyone because we're responsible for who we're being and for what we're allowing to affect us. You know, it's kind of like I have just the feeling or vision right now of like if you're dating someone or you're in relation with someone who's really, really toxic and they're always pissing you off and you're always emotionally upset by them, but you're choosing to remain with them. It's like, well, that's a choice to not be in your most powerful self because you're keeping yourself in a situation where you're emotionally distraught or where you're not able to focus on your own stuff because you're always upset about something over here. And like, no judgment, been there a million times, but not a million, but you know what I mean? Like we've all been there in different capacities. And then there's a point where you're like, no more. Actually, this person actually doesn't get to control my emotional state. And that's the same thing that we can do with the political system. And again, because some people are going to watch this and they're going to be listening with the ear of like spiritual bypassing or listening for the ear of like, oh, there's another white woman not taking responsibility, you know, and it's we are in our most powerful state when we are rooted, grounded, centered, focused, and strong and nourished. And we can learn how to do that from the center point of caring about what's going on in the world system to other people, and also from stewarding our highest embodiment. And it has to be both because if we're doing either one, if you're on the activist end, that's like, you know, thinking about the elements, like activism is like all fire. And how many activists do you know that are actually very nourished, that are actually very well taken care of, that are operating with their strongest centeredness, and then when we go to the other side, spiritual bypassing, it's like all air and water potentially, but probably all air. There's not a groundedness, there's not a connection to the actual earth plane, there's not a connection to your humanity. So how do we bring all of those elements in balance? And I'm just like feeling the tree tingling my back over here. Um, how do we bring all of those elements in balance? So this isn't what I'm saying here isn't the highest ultimate truth. This is my truth. And it's just something that I wanted to share because I've had a lot of people talking about feeling really scattered and feeling very fragmented and not feeling like they're um, feeling like their mental state is kind of being taken over completely. And there are some situations where that might happen. A lot of people have just gotten laid off. A lot of people that like spur of the moment, you don't have any inkling. And of course, that can happen in any sort of industry. That's just a life thing that can happen, right? But there are also things that where we're not actually really being affected by something. We're not actually personally touched by it, but we're letting it affect us as if it has created that tornado in our own life. And that is a choice, and that's not a responsible choice for stewarding our power. We can steward our power and still give a shit and care about what's happening around us. And what I'm coming to learn just from my own experience in the last 2 years is that the best way, oh, kitty cat is joining. She's an outside cat, so I can only touch her head or she'll attack me. Isn't she so pretty though? I'm gonna try to show you her. Oh, there she is. Hi. What was I saying? Yeah, so what I'm learning is just the best way for us to actually create change is to be able to be rooted into our own mission fully and completely and in a grounded space so that we have the capacity to actually do something to change the problems that we are thinking about. Why, babe? Okay, come over here. Yeah, this way. Okay. So that's the only way we can actually create real change because if we're scattered and all over the place and um, mentally, emotionally, physically depleted, not taking care of ourselves, we actually can't create change. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you disagree, be respectful. Um, and if you have anything you want to add to this conversation, put it in the comments. So I'm actually doing a 25% off sale for the entire month of March for Akashic Record readings because we're going into such an intense energetic time, and there's so much shifting and happening. There's what I'm seeing just in the air and the space and the collective is that there are multi-lifetime, like ancestral generational trauma that's like, maybe 300 lifetimes deep, and maybe depending on how old your soul is, like maybe 1,000 lifetimes deep. Things that have been deeply affecting you on a DNA level for dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of lifetimes that are now ready to be broken. And it's because we're about to have a mass spiritual awakening. Essentially, the vibration is raising, the frequency on the planet is rising, which is why all of this patriarchal stuff, they're kicking and screaming and they're doing their worst, or they're planning to do their worst. Like they're in that mindset because they know it's about to phase out. They know it's like it's just kicking and screaming because it knows it's done. And as this light is rising, as the frequency is rising, there are things that are shifting and breaking. However, as humans, we have a tendency to hold on, or to a lot of people still ignore their intuition. For me, this isn't necessarily something that I do as much as I used to because of constant confirmation in the records of our intuitive wisdom and how that's always the right answer. However, there's still a lot of times that people are choosing to cling on to what's comfortable or are being directly influenced by fear in a way that they're not going to move forward in the direction that they're being called to. So the record sessions essentially are an instructional blueprint and an energetic attunement for you of what needs to shift so you can be in your highest power. What information do you need? What are the literal DNA activations, or what are the past life memories that you need to remember so that you can activate your highest version of yourself? Profound. It's truly profound. You can look at the reviews on my website. Um, Yeah, so you can use the code Akashic25 for 25% off for any time that you book in March. I will say there's only going to be like 10 or 11 sessions available. So if you want to get one of those discounted sessions, make sure you book early and so that you can pick the time frame that works for you. Um, so yeah, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment and let me know what you thought. If you want to add anything to the conversation, if you want to share anything about if you've had a session with me and you want to share about that, I would love for you to share that in the comments. And then subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more honest, real information about what's happening energetically, about the ancient feminine, and about attuning to our soul mission and really aligning with the reason that we're here, cultivating our life around that. So, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you and your time, and I'll see you on the next video.